schools came to present themselves and to impose themselves, and Darmstadt became the kind of annual fair, music fair, where composers could go and learn about the latest developments that had taken and were then sort of the order of the day, and everybody had to follow these new ideas and recommendations, forgetting completely that there is, for every composer, his own style, his own ways to go about music and think about music and make music available for his artistic needs. All that had been should now be forgotten. Everything will be different. The sun will transform everything. Crossing Tuscany, a broad and immense receptacle of grace and proportion, much silence, more forgetting, great expectations.
In going his own way, as he always does, he chose to spurn the rigorous home offered by many of his contemporaries, who then returned the compliment by ignoring his music, thinking it irrelevant at best, or even self-indulgent. But now his music seems more and more important, particularly in its direct appeal to the senses. He's found a way of continuing the aesthetic line which produced 19th century opera and symphonic music, whilst weaving new spells around it. Henze is essentially a storyteller, and much of his music has some kind of literary inspiration. His 8th symphony is based on A Midsummer Night's Dream, but as viewed through an essentially Italian sensibility. This is the Italy of the Decameron, of conviviality, and of warm, sultry nights. Shakespeare's Magic Wood has had a transfusion of warm Mediterranean air. Hans is a wonderful writer for the orchestra. When you hear the solo trombone farting, belching and lurching around, you can just imagine Bottom's attempt to be as graceful as Titania. At the same time, the passionate, elegant string and woodwind writing give you a picture of the Queen herself. And what I find endlessly touching is the way that the music can join together these two very unlikely partners. Just as the rise of communism cast its spell over the start of the century, so its collapse defines our own time. Literally leaving home was the only answer for some musicians like Stravinsky and Bartók. But for others, like Shostakovich, as we've seen, uneasy compromise was the only possible survival tactic. Until recently, much of what we knew about musicians in Eastern Europe seemed to indicate a terrifying conformity, the party line transmuted into sound. Without Shostakovich's ability to write in code, to produce two streams of thought, one acceptable, the other subversive, simultaneously, it seemed as if most of the music signified precisely nothing. Thank God this impression was just sheer Western ignorance, for the fall of communism revealed a whole generation of important composers who'd been almost silenced. In the best of them, an intense spirituality, perhaps born out of their difficulties, is central. Faith, stubborn, obstinate faith, must have been what kept these people going. It's hardly surprising that their music shines with an entirely non-Western kind of intensity. My first impression on meeting Sofia Gubaidulina was rather disconcerting. She seemed to have the face of a fierce Russian icon, but with the young Judy Garland's hairstyle. However, I soon found out that the icon was the real truth. She described very clearly to me how the ugliness of the surroundings that she grew up in forced her to look up into the sky for her inspiration.